Hello, this is Lucy from the Indian Art Center. Today I'm meeting Balraj Khanna at his home in London. We're going to talk about his work, but more specifically about his upcoming exhibition. Balraj Khanna has been described by Mal Gooding as one of the best middle generation painters we have, and by Brian Robertson as one of the most distinguished artists working in England. Balraj Khanna just had a retrospective exhibition at the MoMA Wells, presenting more than 50 years as an artist. Being also a prolific author, he recently launched his latest novel, The Myth of Simla, at the Nehru Center.
This is Balraj Khanna, and I'm in my studio, which is a very messy place at the moment, as you can see. I try to put order in things, but I never succeed. So, in a way, it's quite fun. I enjoy being surrounded by my own work, hundreds and hundreds of paintings, many of them rolled up, others just pinned to the walls. And it's an exercise in reassuring yourself that you are alive. You are alive, and you are alive through your work. And look at these; some of these are very old paintings, which I discovered only yesterday by chance. They were in a huge roll of canvases, and I have put some out because I'm going to stress them. This red one was painted in 1967. The one next to that greyish one was painted about the same time, and you can even see the similarities in the two works. The movement and the mood is both quite similar to each other. At the same time, there is a very new work next to these two, painted 15 months ago or so, where the mood is totally different. It's an ethereal painting, more to do with an astral painting with the life above the earth, so to speak, things in flight, things in a flux, as in space. Very spatial work. It is capturing a moment in space, all these heavenly bodies circulating, relating to each other, attracting each other, repelling each other, and creating an atmosphere of their own, very unique atmosphere. Next to that is another picture, an old painting, which has a very different mood, but it's much more nearer the first two paintings I showed you, the red one and the grey one, in terms of the swirling movement of the shapes, and this very fine white line going all over the canvas and also it encapsulates some of the shapes and forms, which can be of birds and fishes more like. And then we move to a landscape picture here. That's an early oil landscape movement again. It could be whirlpools and such like, and the one behind you is more a painting dealing with water, the blue one, more to do with water, like a regatta. All these shapes are swimming and moving vertically and descending with the force of gravity. And little works like these, for instance, again, these are very new, and they have the same kind of movement, spatial feeling of space, but they're also very liberating. These shapes are liberating. It's, they're liberating. They have a liberating influence on the psyche, on the soul, and on your mood. And as opposed to these, I would like you to have a look at a very old painting, which is so simple that it is almost minimalist, long before anyone had heard of the term minimalism. It's only black background with a very fine white line etched all over it, as if in a jumbled up spaghetti sort of thing. It's the simplest painting. There's no noise in it, but yet there's music in it. It's so densely populated with these lines that they create a symphony of their own. And as you can see, all these paintings here, and the rest of they're where they are stored unsystematically, I'm afraid. And I can get lost here, but I enjoy coming here to see, reassuring, as I said earlier, that I am alive. Gives me that feeling that I am doing something with my hands, with my head, with my heart. These are the three things that make art. I always work from my studio, but the question of inspiration is a very tricky one, in the sense that inspiration has its own way of manifesting itself in you. In my case, I think my inspiration comes from the people close to me, people I love, really, and also from nature, and from some other artists, literature. The written word is very important for me, but mostly it is observing, seeing things, and I like to think that sometimes I feel that something that I'm looking at, I may have seen it hundreds of times before, but sometimes suddenly they appear to me to be as if I was looking at them for the first time in my life. Curiosity, wanting to know, wanting to search, looking and searching and finding. All this comes as a packet of inspiration. There are moments in life when you really feel inspired, you feel possessed. A friend of mine used to say, "Balraj, you are a man possessed." And I said, "Are you insulting me?" She said, "No, it's a compliment." That your belief in yourself can be very inspirational in its own way. I met Francis Sousa within the very first few days of my arrival here. That was the winter of 1962-63, the winter of discontent. It was the most awful winter. I had an introduction to him. When I came from India, my professor at university had given me 5 introductions. 2 of them were very distinguished, very famous artists, Francis Sousa and Avinash Chandra. The third person was the keeper emeritus of the Indian section at the V&A, W.G. Archer. The fourth person was an art critic at the time of the Guardian newspaper called George Butcher. And the fifth was the Indian poet Dom Moraes. I never met Dom Moraes, but I met all the other 4, and of whom Sousa was the first one I had the pleasure, the honor to meet. I was only 22 years old. He was 20 years older than me. So I looked up to him as a sort of a mentor, and he became, from the day one, he took to me as I took to him. I took to him out of respect and admiration, but he took to me thinking I was a young idiot fool who had some talent, but who needed some encouragement and some help to find himself. So he instilled a sense of myself in me, and we were great friends. We became very great friends, to the extent that I started working in his studio. He let me work in his studio. He then lived in Belsize Park in a big house. And this Muse flat, only the first floor of this house, he had bought as a kind of a love nest for his very young new girlfriend, who later became his wife, Barbara. And then in 1967, he had suffered a very bad press here, and his career took a steep decline. As meteoric his rise had been, his downfall was equally dramatic. He became a bankrupt. He was bankrupted, in other words. And he decided to go to live in America to try his luck there, which was a bad career move. Nonetheless, as he had this flat, I had just come back from France, where I left my wife Francine and our 2 baby daughters. I'd come here to look for a flat, and I came to see him in this house, this flat. And he said, "What are you doing, Balraj?" I said, "I'm looking for a flat, Francis." We used to call him Sonny, which was his family surname. He said, "You're kidding." I said, "No, I'm not kidding. I need a flat." He said, "You can have this flat. I'm going to New York." So this is how it happened. So we signed a paper, which was absolutely unnecessary thing to do, because it didn't have any legal binding, him being a proclaimed bankrupt. However, our friendship continued till the last days of his life, and whenever we met, it was a great joy. I look forward to meeting him, and continued to remain a source of inspiration. You say inspiration, let me go back to that word. People like him were very inspiring for me. By example, when I saw him being so totally committed to himself, to his work, that rubbed off on me, and that made me realize how committed I was. I had to be to myself, to my work. Nothing else mattered to me, only my commitment to my work. Oh, well, it's a very good question, and a very important question, in the sense that, being an Indian, I'm always interested in my country, my background. Like everybody, I love my country, even though I love England too, very deeply. But you see, where you were born is very special, a very special place for you. And it's also inspirational for me to think of India as a great nation, a great old civilization, which is quite unique in the world, in the world history, which had offered a great deal to the world, and it is a great source of pride for me. And it manifests itself mostly in my writing, for instance. All my novels are set in India. Even a book I wrote for children is set in an Indian jungle called the Raja of the Jungle, Raja being the big tiger. And also a particular type of Indian sense of humor. My writing is supposed to be funny. I can't write anything serious. It has to be funny by nature. So my bond continues and it flourishes. My bond with India continues to flourish. I started those small paintings many years ago, when I had bad flu, and I couldn't, really do any big works, because, as you saw in my studio, there are some very large paintings, and when you are working on a large canvas, it requires you to move around all the time. I work standing up. So I would just sit down on this sofa here, have a drawing board in my lap, have little small pieces of canvas. I draw on them, and then I painted them in oils, some earlier ones in watercolors, and I enjoy doing them. You enjoy working on large scale, but equally fruitful is working on a very small scale. And I think they are amongst some of the very beautiful things I have done. It is very important, yeah, and people like David Hockney, they are taking full advantage of it. I wish I had the brains to do so, but I like to feel the paint in my hand and feel the brush in my fingers.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us. And the paintings by Balraj Khanna will be on sale exclusively in an online exhibition on the Indian Art website. Thank you.
Thank you.